among Tarantino's fan base, this movie has a very interesting reputation.
Okay.
For the longest time, this was considered his most underrated movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like when it first came out in '97, it got like a handful of Globe nominations, and Robert Forster got an Oscar nomination. But people tended to dismiss it because it depends on where you stand with Tarantino, what exactly you're going to say about this. People who loved Tarantino considered it, well, okay, this is hard to word.
His weakest to date?
Yeah, and the people who don't like a lot of critics said this was Tarantino growing up.
Okay.
Because it wasn't over the top or, wasn't like fantastical. It was a very grounded, straightforward crime story with hardly a drop of blood in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is I don't know, there's 3 people that die, 3 main characters anyway. And you only see blood on one of them.
True.
With Jackson, you see, just bullet holes. But the only bloody death we get is when he shoots De Niro, and you see the blood on the windshield.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most you get, and we don't even see Chris Tucker's death is like from a very far away distance, and you don't even see his body. So I think people who were fans of the Wild and Out Tarantino were they didn't know how to take this.
Okay.
Because it was right after Pulp Fiction, which was known for being just totally out of control. No, he really calmed down with this, and it's probably on account of, to date, this is the only, wait, hold on. Yes. To date, this is his only movie that is not his own thing. It's based off the Elmore Leonard novel.
Mm-hmm.
Rum Punch. So, which he changed a lot of. Like, her name's not even Jackie Brown, and it's Jackie Burke, and she's white. But,
he wanted to do a nice ode to blaxploitation films, and that's the reason he brought Pam Grier in, and that makes sense.
So, the basic story is, Jackie Brown is a flight attendant that's doing, transporting drugs for Ordell, who is Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets caught by Michael Keaton, who is Ray Nicolette, who, by the way, reprised that part in an uncredited cameo in Out of Sight, which was also an Elmore Leonard novel.
Did not know that.
But then she decides that she'd rather work with Keaton than Jackson. But then it turns out she may or may not be playing both of them just to get herself on top, and obviously, Jackson is no longer a fan of hers when he finds this out. There's this great scene where Jackson comes to her door in the middle of the night, and they're just kind of talking, and you don't know whether or not she's aware of if he knows or not.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're walking through the house, he's turning the lights off as he goes through. And then finally there's a shot of them in the window, and two women just standing there, and it kind of looks like he's touching her face.
Mm-hmm.
But then you just hear her say, "You better get your hands off of my neck." And then she turns the lights back on, and then he was about to kill her. So, yeah, despite not being exactly Tarantino-esque, this has just as many memorable scenes as any other Tarantino movie. It's just, the great thing, and the really smart thing was, Tarantino said, when he made this, he wasn't trying to top Pulp Fiction.
Mm.
He just was making it.
Okay.
So, it's very character heavy. There's a lot of, let me give myself a help here.
Nice.
Obviously you have Pam Grier, who's Jackie, and Jackson, who's Ordell, but, you have Keaton. There's De Niro, who is, he and Ordell were, I guess they met in prison,
Mm.
and then they formed a bond. And there's a movie being made right now, or it was already been shot. It's called Switch, I think, which was another Elmore Leonard novel. I think there's like 2 or 3 novels that have Ordell and Lewis in them.
Nice.
And in Switch, it's a story about them in prison. And Ordell is Mos Def, and Lewis is John Hawkes.
That's awesome.
Last I heard. And there's he doesn't really do it. He sits on the couch and he gets stoned with Melanie, who is Bridget Fonda. Mm-hmm. And but then he kind of gets involved at the end. There's the particular. This is where it gets really Tarantino. We have the money exchange that's going on in the mall, mm-hmm. but we see it from every character's perspective. Like the scene plays out from Jackie's perspective, and then we rewind, and the scene happens all over again, only from Melanie and Lewis's perspective, and then one more time, and we see it from Max Cherry's perspective, who is Robert Forster. Mm-hmm. That's about as Tarantino-y as it gets.
Yeah.
Apart from the language, like this was like the N-word controversy that Django started. Mm-hmm. Supposedly, people started really complaining about that with this, but I don't. It's been a little while since I saw it, but I don't recall many racial slurs in this movie.
There's a few. I mean, I watched it for the first time with you. Probably the last time you watched it, if I had to guess, unless you watched it previously.
Yeah, that would have been. It was,
past that.
Yeah, it was a couple years ago. Mm. We had a Elmore Leonard double feature with it and Get Shorty.
Yes.
And then you have the you have Max Cherry, who is like a timid bail bondsman, which are two things that don't really go together.
No.
And he's picking up Jackie when she's released from prison, from when she was caught with Ordell's drugs at the airport.
Yeah.
As soon as they say this is probably the most tender moment you'll ever see in a Tarantino movie, apart from when the bride cries after she kills Bill. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Robert Forster and Pam Grier aren't exactly a match made in heaven in appearance, but when she's coming out of the police station and she's walking, Max watches her the whole time and basically falls in love with her while she's walking towards him, even though they'd never met in their entire lives. They immediately go out for drinks and smoking and all that. She introduces him to, can't remember the name of the song or who it is, but the song plays throughout the whole movie. And that's kind of their connection, the song. And then you have Chris Tucker, who's pictured on the back, who is Beaumont Livingston, who is basically... I don't remember his exact purpose. He's just been released from prison, and Ordell's afraid that he's going to rat him out.
Okay.
So there's this great. He only has one scene, but it's this great scene where he goes to his apartment and he talks him into. Ordell says, "I need you to do like." What's very interesting about this movie is even though Jackie Brown is the main character and the title character and the main focus, the opening is Jackie coming to work, and it's a take on The Graduate's opening, mm-hmm. where Hoffman's on the moving sidewalk thing, and we see her going to work on it, and that's where the opening credit scene is, and then we don't see her again for like half an hour. It's all Ordell's story at the start. His Golden Globe nomination was in leading, which he is a leading character.
Yeah.
So Ordell goes to Beaumont's apartment and convinces him to do a job for him because he just bailed him out of prison. Like the first time we meet Max Cherry, he's there to bail out Beaumont.
Okay.
So then he says, we get the Tarantino trunk shot, and he does this whole, okay, I'm going to give you this shotgun, you get in the trunk, and when I get to where I am, you pop out the trunk and just point the shotgun. That's all you got to do. And this takes quite a lot of convincing. Like, this dialogue goes back and forth for a while.
Yeah.
And finally, he just shuts him in the trunk, and then he turns on a great song called Strawberry Letter 23. a very Tarantino movie song. And then in one shot, we love those Tarantino long takes. Ordell turns around and drives down the street, and then the camera comes up, and we see this like vacant lot right next to the sidewalk, and he's driving through it, and then he stops the car, the music stops, he gets out and goes around, and he opens the trunk, and you hear Beaumont start to complain, and you just hear 2 gunshots, and the trunk's shutting, and then he gets back in the car, and the song starts again, and he drives off. He just drives it right back to his house to show Lewis. So, then there was, Melanie. Melanie doesn't really... Melanie's whole purpose is to not do a lot. She's just this beach bunny that lays on his couch and gets high. And Bridget Fonda is like... People talk about Tarantino's obvious foot fetish. People talk about how, like, you know, obviously Uma Thurman and Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill makes that clear. Pretty much her entire screen time, Bridget Fonda might as well be giving the camera a foot job. Yeah. In case it wasn't blatantly obvious enough. So, while I have this open, you said about it being an ode to blaxploitation movies.
Yes.
Which used to have those old illustrated posters.
Yes.
And the DVD actually comes with... I don't know who the artist of this is. It probably says somewhere, but it is a blaxploitation-esque poster for Jackie Brown.
That's awesome.
I don't know how well it comes up on camera, but fairly well.
Not bad.
So, let's talk about some particularly great scenes. Like, under pressure, I'm going to draw a blank. There's an interesting reunion, while I'm thinking of it, of Chris Tucker's obviously in the movie as Beaumont. I guess this is ironic, because one of the Max Cherry is kind of the timid bail bondsman. You have the other bail bondsman, who is whatever name he goes by. Tommy Lister, there's Zeus, there's Tiny, whatever he's going by at this particular time. But he's the bail bondsman that's like huge and like carries a bat and shit. So yeah, I think people just... Oh, yeah, well, that's actually a thought I never completed.
Yeah.
Going back to what I started saying at first, for the longest time, this was considered to be Tarantino's most underrated movie.
Okay.
Like everybody's saying, hey, Reservoir Dogs is great, Pulp Fiction's great, Kill Bill is awesome, Bastards is amazing. And then there'd always be that one guy that says, man, I think Jackie Brown's pretty underrated. But the thing is now, is with time, Jackie Brown's become like one of his more beloved.
Interesting.
Which is because it kind of like Jackie Brown is like the movie form Gary Oldman. If you call something underrated long enough, it's going to become beloved.
I can see that.
It's like there's people still try to say that, but there's no fucking way ever now you could call Gary Oldman underrated because it's in the light now, and I think that's what's happened with Jackie Brown. You have the opening scene, and it's actually a special feature on the DVD. The running joke is Ordell has these tapes called I think it's called Chicks with Big Guns.
Yes.
He's just watching this all the time, and that's when you hear this line everywhere. But the origin of the line was the girl with the AK-47, and that's when Ordell says the famous line, AK-47, the very best there is, when you absolutely positively got to kill every motherfucker in the room, except no substitute. And the Chicks with Big Guns video is actually on the special features.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the thing is this actually is, it's a lot more tender than Tarantino's other movies. Like, it's a tenderness that he hadn't touched before, and he hasn't touched since. Like the, when you think of Tarantino long take, you think of the scene in Pulp Fiction where they're building up for violence. Mm-hmm. Or they're, with, like, walking around the hullabaloo that is Jack Rabbit Saloons. In this, the long takes are more like, the very last shot of the movie is, Jackie and Max kiss, and then she leaves, and she's just gonna leave forever. and it's a really long shot of her just driving down the road, singing the Bobby Womack song across 110th Street is a big deal in this. It bookends the movie, and she's just sitting in her car, very melancholy, and singing it, and that's the final shot. And it's very on Tarantino.
Yeah, I can see that.
But in a fresh way, like him saying, you know, I love the over the top blood and all that, but it's not what I'm all about, is what he's saying. And he has he can have the slickness of an Elmore Leonard novel, because that was a lot of inspiration to him. Because he was telling a story about on my Reservoir Dogs DVD, I think, about how he loved reading Elmore Leonard novels because it was the kind of thing where, like, if you're reading an action story, a guy would be in a car chase and he'd jump into a car and he would, put it in gear and speed off.
Yeah.
But it would be an Elmore Leonard novel where he'd get in the car and he'd go to shift the gear and it would stick on him. Basically.
Nice.
That was his example. There's another long take where she, this is when it's revealed that she's not really on Ray's side, and she's not really on Ordell's side, she's on her own side. So in this drop-off at the mall, she's tricking everybody. Like, Melanie's the only other person that knows. And of course, Melanie gets killed, but I'll go into that in a minute. There's this very interesting shot where she has to go into the dressing room. That's where the trade-off is happening.
Yeah.
And she she's leaving the money there so Max can pick it up. But and Ray thinks she's in there for herself to pick it up. Ray knows nothing about Max. So she comes out without the money, and she's just kind of walking around the mall, and then she starts to put on this feigned, terrified look. And then after this really long shot, she finally calls out to Ray, and when Ray comes out, she says that Melanie broke in and stole the money from him. Now, when you watch the Melanie story, what happened was the bag she gave to Melanie, who's going to give it to Ordell, she filled with, like, books and shit, and just put a little layer of money on top so it looks legitimate. But throughout the entire thing, well, the thing was what's very interesting to watch progress is the relationship between Melanie and Lewis, because they both, like, Lewis is very introverted. Like, he doesn't really. He probably feels a little weird that Ordell just leaves him in his house all the time. We never really get, like, in his head, because he's not really the kind of character you need to get into his head. He's just there. But a lot of people love that. Like, a lot of people say this was De Niro's last good performance before, like, everybody's fine. Nobody saw that, but
it's really good.
So they start off just kind of getting high together, and it's just, there's nothing more to it than that. And then she starts going on and on about her. The thing about Melanie is she talks way too much. Like, I love the scene at the beginning where the phone rings, and Ordell just kind of looks at her and says, "Were you going to answer it?" And she's like, "You know it's for you." And he just stares her down and says, "Don't make me put my foot in your ass." And then she gets up and she answers the phone as, "Hello, it's for you," and she just sets it down. And he gives her the Samuel Jackson death glare on his way to the phone. But anyway, she goes on and on about her childhood, and like she has like pictures of her like from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Like she says, "This is me in Japan," and she points to the background of the picture and goes, "See, that's Japan." And it's during this scene that their relationship takes a turn, because they're just sitting there looking at her pictures, and then she just looks at him and says, "You want to fuck?" And I love De Niro's reaction. It's fun. I guess because it's just the way De Niro says it. His response is just, "Yeah." And you see, I think it says like 3 minutes later, and he's like fucking her from behind in the kitchen, and that's all there is to it. It just stops, and then it gets to the point where they're supposed to go to the mall for the drop-off. And he's getting he's starting to get. I guess the sex loosened him up towards her because he's starting to get pissed off with her now because she's in the bathroom too long. To the point that he actually busts the door down when Ordell tells him they need to go. And through they walk through the mall, and he's getting more agitated as time goes. Like, he just wants her to shut her mouth and just do the job. And there's this this particular moment, and I actually timed it once. She says something. She's talking about him profusely sweating, and they're looking at clothes. And I can't remember what she says, but it pisses him off. And he just gives her this unbroken stare, like the De Niro stare, and it lasts for 8 seconds. He does not move. He just stares her down for 8 seconds in silence.
Good God.
And then, of course, she gets what she thinks is the bag of money. And they go outside, and as if Lewis wasn't agitated enough, he can't find the van. And he said, he finally just is straightforward with her. He says, I'm telling you, just trust me. Do not say another fucking word. Just stop talking. And he turns to go, and she says, okay, Lewis. And he turns around and shoots her to death. Right there in the parking lot. And then just leaves her there and just kind of nonchalantly looks around every now and then. And then immediately finds the van afterwards. Like, he actually looks over to where her body is laying and goes, see, I told you I knew where it was. So yeah, it's the, that kind of brings in the, comedy post-mortem Tarantino style. And then, of course, that's why, and then, you know, he's driving with Ordell afterwards, and he's like, well, you know, she started getting annoying, so, I shot her. And he's like, you shot Melanie? You didn't smack her in the mouth or anything? You just shot her? And he's like, yes, she did. I think so. We never actually, Ray says they found her. So, her death is confirmed. So, yeah, there isn't really as much to go into with Jackie Brown as the others. Like, it's not... I think that's what people like about it, is it's pretty... For a Tarantino movie, it's actually a pretty straightforward story. Like, it's not like... It doesn't have all the layers of Pulp Fiction, but it doesn't need them. It's the same length as Pulp Fiction, 2 hours and 34 minutes, but it has such a flow to it. Like, you don't even... Like, the scenes with Ordell in the beginning, with before Jackie even really shows up, you don't even realize that particular case, because it's just got a... Every Tarantino movie is like this. It's just got that meticulous pacing. Mm-hmm. Like, if anybody knows about pacing, it's Tarantino and Sally Mangy, which, hopefully, his new editor can get into that swing of things. I thought Django's editing was fine, but some people said they could glaringly tell there was a difference, but we'll see what happens in the future. Shit. I'd like to bring on a small tidbit of information, which I mentioned in the Pulp Fiction video, but I'll mention again. God damn it. I will mention in this video because it's relevant now. In a lot of Pam Grier's old movies, the 70s blaxploitation movies, like when she had the afro, and she, shot people, oftentimes Sid Haig would have a recurring role as a random villain. Mm-hmm. So Tarantino thought it'd be really funny for when Jackie gets arrested, Sid Haig be the judge that convicts her. So, he actually gets a single credit in the opening, too, despite the fact that he's in it for, 5 seconds, and that's it. Yeah, all the performances are great, particularly Jackson and Pam Grier, who, like I said, scored Globe nominations. I don't mind Robert Forster's nomination, but I'm so weird about that. Like, as much as I love Tarantino's movies, a lot of the actors that have gotten Oscar nominations for his movies, I tend to question. Because, as much as I love Travolta in Pulp Fiction, I wasn't quite sure what made them decide to give him a Best Actor nomination. And I said, Mia is my least favorite character in the movie, and Uma Thurman was nominated. And with Forster now. So, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, he's got a very, well, first off, he was a respected veteran actor. Like, Tarantino is known now for the whole plucking veteran actors out of obscurity and putting them in his movies. At this point in time, Robert Forster was one of those people. So that might have helped. And it's a very internal performance, you know, like he doesn't have a big scene at all. He's very confined the whole time. So, yeah. I think that might cover it. So, yeah, it's nice to see that it's come out of underrated territory and it's more in the... It's pretty well known for being one of his best. You know, being one of Tarantino's best, like I said, is not really... It's kind of hard to distinguish because Tarantino's worst is better than a majority of things. So, I think next week, I guess I'll do the ones he took part in, like, there'll be 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'll quickly touch on True Romance, which he wrote, 4 Rooms, which he did a segment in, From Dusk Till Dawn, which he wrote, and Natural Born Killers, which he, the basic outline is his, but he and Oliver Stone kind of had issues with the way the movie turned out, because it turned out nothing like Tarantino would do. I guess we can use that time to discuss what Natural Born Killers might have been like in Tarantino's hands. So, yeah. I feel like there should be more I should go into, but that pretty much covers my opinion of it. Like I said, despite its 2 hour and 34 minute length, Tarantino's movies are pretty easy to do. They have such a flow to them that you can pretty much sum them up rather quickly, despite all that happens on them. So, yeah, you can tell that he wasn't trying to beat Pulp Fiction by any means, which is helpful in how successful it was. It's not trying to overshoot anything. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's got that coolness to it. Also, one minor note, everybody looks for the Tarantino cameo. In this particular movie, Jackie comes home and hits her answering machine, and it says, "You have one message." The voice that says, "You have one message" is Tarantino's.
Wow.
And you can tell. He tries to do like a robotic answering machine voice, but you can fucking tell it's him. You're not hiding anything, Tarantino. So, yeah, that wraps up Jackie Brown, so, until next week when we touch on the others, that's that.